Hi, I'm Pepper Persley, and this is Rebel Girl Sports Hour. Together, we'll dive into stories of strength, courage, and game-changing moments on and off the field. From snowy mountains to fast racetracks, these iconic women athletes will inspire you to chase your dreams. Today, we're going to buckle up and hit the track, and we'll be talking about, and to, some incredible women in motorsports. From Formula One races to high-flying motorbikes, our featured rebels love adrenaline and adventure. Now, not everyone is born to race, but Susie definitely was. She first took the wheel at just 8 years old and eventually found her way to the driver's seat of the world's fastest cars. Her story is going to be read by F1 racing presenter Ariana Bravo. Start your engines as we begin our day at the racetrack with F1 Academy Managing Director Susie Wolff.
As the sun rose over the racetrack, the roar of the engines electrified the air. The F1 Academy drivers lined their cars up in their grid positions, ready to go. Susie Wolff looked over the racers with pride. She remembered the adrenaline rush of sitting in the driver's seat. She knew just how much time and effort each of the women had put in to earn their slot. As the seconds ticked down, the drivers checked their pedals and readied their hands on the wheels. The whirring engines and the cheers of the crowd echoed in Susie's ears. Everyone watched as the starting lights turned on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They held their breaths, waiting for them to blink off and start the race. With all lights on, it would only be seconds now. And then, go! The lights went off and so did the racers, their cars flying down the circuit. The race was on. Susie Wolff was born in Oban, a small coastal town in Scotland. Her parents, John and Sally, owned a motorcycle dealership and were both passionate riders. They had fallen in love when Sally entered John's shop looking for her first motorbike. So their daughter's interest in driving did not come as a surprise. Susie's parents had seen her need for speed and thought 4 spinning wheels might do the trick. So when Susie was 8, they took her to a kart racing circuit for the first time. As Susie gripped the steering wheel, the roar of the engine vibrated through her entire body. With every turn of the track, she felt the thrill of acceleration and the power of control. The wind rushed past her, pulling at her race suit and making her heart pound with excitement. In that moment, she knew that kart racing was more than just a hobby. It was a passion waiting to be unleashed. Karting soon became Susie's life. She trained as much as possible, perfecting her techniques and pushing herself to go faster and faster. By the time she was 18 years old, Susie placed 15th in the World Karting Championship. With this early success under her belt, she began to turn her attention to racing bigger, more powerful cars. But becoming a professional car racer was no easy task. The world of motorsports was, and still is, dominated by men. Many qualified women can't get the money they need to progress to higher levels of racing. Investors and sponsors are wary. No woman has ever won a Formula One race, they say. Why should we take that risk? But Susie didn't listen to the doubters. She knew that women could compete and beat men, if only they were given the opportunity to train at the same level. There was one thing Susie knew for sure. She needed a team. Only a team of professional mechanics, engineers, and fitness coaches could give her that ultra-tailored training that could allow her to compete at the best of her abilities. And only a team could make sure she was always driving a top-performing car. Susie had to come up with a plan. She spent all of her savings on a test drive with a Formula Renault racing car. Renault cars are one of the first levels of motor racing, where drivers can learn how to operate a vehicle at higher speeds. The cars can accelerate from 0 to 62 miles per hour in just 3 seconds. Shorter than the time it takes to read this sentence. Susie was hoping that someone would notice her in the Formula Renault track and decide to invest in her future as a professional racer. Susie knew this might be her only chance. She zipped around the track, taking the turns as fast as she could and going all out on the straights. At the end of the test, the sponsors were impressed. One of the sponsors even signed her right then and there. Finally, Susie could build her team and begin her career as a professional driver. For 3 years, Susie trained hard and competed in the Formula Renault UK Championship. She finished on the podium 3 times and earned 2 nominations as British Young Driver of the Year. Susie's momentum was building and she qualified for the British Formula 3. F3 cars were the next level up. Like the Renault cars, but better. If she mastered F3 racing, Susie would be able to move up to F2 and then even F1, the premier level of racing. F1 or Formula 1 is the top level of racing with the fastest cars. Drivers squeeze into tiny cockpits which get incredibly hot, up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Drivers need quick reflexes and precise steering to react to changes on the track. And they have to have strong, powerful legs to stomp on the pedals. This means that drivers must be in excellent shape, both physically and mentally, to race well and stay safe. Everything was aligning for Susie. But then, while she was in intense training, she broke her ankle on a run. It was a serious injury, and she knew right away that she'd have to take time off. She wouldn't be able to train with such a bad break, let alone race. Susie lost her sponsor and lost her seat in Formula 3. She was so discouraged that she considered giving up her racing career entirely. But then one day, the phone rang. Someone from a top sponsor, Mercedes-Benz, had noticed her and offered her a contract racing another type of car, called the DTM. They would give her a 1-year contract to race once her ankle was healed. Susie jumped at the chance and got on a flight to Germany. At the end of the first season, Susie had raced so well that they renewed her contract for 6 more years. With that, Susie was back on track to achieving her dream. While racing for Mercedes in Germany, Susie also started working as a development driver for Williams, a Formula 1 team. She loved racing the more powerful cars, watching the world flash by. The following year, she decided to commit to Formula 1 full-time. This was a big deal. No woman had even come close to a Formula 1 circuit for over 2 decades. Susie could hardly contain her excitement. Then, soon after, another dream came true. On a Grand Prix weekend, Susie was allowed to take a few practice runs on the track. This was one of the biggest races of the year, and there were many cameras and spectators. Susie put her helmet on and slid into the low-slung cockpit. She adjusted the steering wheel and buckled the harness. As the engine roared to life, Susie felt ready to push the limits of speed and skill. With a surge of acceleration, her car hurtled down the track with precision. Susie was fast, so fast that her lap time was just 0.2 of a second longer than some of the world's greatest drivers. That kind of recognition felt amazing. But a year later, after a few more practice runs, Susie felt it was time to hang up her racing helmet. She was ready for a change. She decided that if she couldn't break into the sport by being an excellent driver, then she would have to try another way. One way or another, she was determined to help the next generation of women enter the world of professional racing. The opportunity came when Formula One asked her to become the managing director of the F1 Academy, an all-female series to help women reach the highest level of motorsport. Susie now had the opportunity to drive change from the inside. With the new all-female F1 Academy, each of the 10 Formula One teams is sponsoring their own women drivers to represent their team. And as the leader of the academy, Susie can make sure that the young women selected are offered the best training facilities and the best equipment. She knows that even something as simple as the fabric of a racing suit can make a huge difference. Susie wants women to see themselves in motorsport, both on and off the track. F1 Academy has helped create a space in F1 for women to take the wheel and receive the training that they need to succeed. There are also many opportunities for women to be involved in motorsport outside of being a driver, including careers in engineering, strategizing, and mechanical work, all three of which are essential to any successful race. In a recent interview, Susie said, "When you switch on the TV in Miami this weekend, you will see a 19-year-old girl zipping up a Ferrari race suit. And that's such a powerful image." Although only 5 women have competed in Formula One history so far, today over 40% of the Formula One fan base is female. And with more and more young drivers entering the academy, things are destined to change. That day on the track, Susie looked at all the women lined up in their cars and knew that she was doing something right. The future of racing was in their hands. And that future is starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
What a rush! Susie has had some amazing adventures and is now paving the way for more girls to join the race. I love stories of girls supporting girls. Now that we've heard Susie's story, let's hear from her too. Our host Layla is going to ask her about discovering her need for speed and what it feels like to be behind the wheel of a race car. Take it away, Layla.
Hi, Susie. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you grew up?
Hi, Layla. Absolutely. My name is Susie Wolff and I grew up on the west coast of Scotland. I got my first little motorbike at the age of 2. I started racing karts at the age of 8. And then at the age of 13, I had the dream of trying to become a Formula One driver. I progressed into single-seaters, into Formula 3, then I raced for many years for Mercedes-Benz, and then finally I made it into the world of Formula One as a test driver for the Williams Formula One team.
Wow, that's so cool. And Scotland sounds amazing. So how did you find out you had this awesome passion for racing? Was there someone who first got you interested?
Well, I was really lucky that I had an older brother. He's only 18 months older than me, and I had the belief that anything he could do, I could do. And I loved speed, I loved adrenaline, and I loved competition. So I was doing lots of karting, and then I started getting good results. And that's what helped me shape my view that I wanted to try and be a professional racing driver.
Wow, that's so cool. So now I have to ask, how does it feel to be in a race car? Is it kind of like flying in a way?
Oh, Layla, I wish you could feel what it's like to be in a race car. I think the closest way I can describe it is being on a really fast roller coaster, but it's you deciding where the roller coaster is going. It's incredible speed and it's a lot of fun.
That sounds like so much fun. I love going on roller coasters. A lot of people might not know how much strength it takes to be an F1 driver. Can you tell us about what your training looks like?
It's incredibly tough in a race car because of all the G-forces that go through your body when you're going fast. So you need to do a lot of training, particularly on the upper body, to make sure that your neck's strong enough and your arms are strong enough, your legs so that you can hit the brakes hard enough. So a lot of physical preparation to make sure that as a racing driver, you're in the best form to make sure that you can be consistent out on track and very fast.
That sounds so fascinating. I also read you had an ankle injury while training. That sounded painful and tough. How did you handle that injury? Was it hard to bounce back? And what helped you come back even stronger?
You know, Lila, I would love to tell you that ankle injury, I broke my ankle in 10 places and had 2 pins and a big long plate put in. I would love to tell you it was a high-speed crash, but it was actually, I was out running and I slipped. So it was really, really bad luck. And it was the beginning of what was an important season for me. I remember that there were some really tough days where I was so sad and disappointed. And it took all my strength to keep picking myself back up, to keep on with my training. Even though I couldn't walk, I carried on with all of my upper body training. And I never stopped believing in myself, that I could get my racing license back, that I could get back into a Formula 3 team, that I could keep racing. And it's not always easy, but it's in those moments, the most important is to believe in yourself. Tell yourself, I can do this.
I love that advice. That is truly inspiring to hear. You're now the managing director of F1 Academy, which is amazing. What's one thing you want girls to know about F1 Academy, and how is it here to support them?
I would love girls to know that F1 Academy is definitely trying to change the perception of motorsport just being for boys and for men. In the end, it's one of the few sports in the world that women can compete with men, but also there's so many opportunities within the sport, whether that's on track as a racing driver or off track in mechanical engineering or in journalism. There's so many different jobs you can do in the world of motorsports, and in some ways it's just about understanding that it's possible. And I don't think there's any reason why girls and women can't be in motorsport.
Your passion and dedication to F1 is truly inspiring. And finally, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your 8-year-old self?
I think I would go back and tell my 8-year-old self, go for it. Grab every opportunity and always bring your best self to the table. And in the end, you can only be the best you. So as long as you give it your best, that's all you can ever ask of yourself.
Thanks so much, Susie. It's been amazing getting to hear your story and all the ways you're inspiring the next generation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Layla. I love that Susie not only chased her dream onto the racetrack, but helped younger generations of girls break into motorsports too. How exciting! Next, let's talk to Ariana Bravo, who is a Formula One presenter. Susie Wolff has been a mentor and inspiration to Ariana as she's made her own career in motorsports. And now, Ariana is sharing her love of racing with girls everywhere. Back to you, Layla, for more.
Hi, Ariana. We're so excited to have you on the podcast.
Hello.
Can you please start by introducing yourself to our listeners?
I am Ariana Bravo. I'm from London and I am a Formula One presenter.
That's so cool. What do you do as an F1 presenter and how do you prepare ahead of time?
So an F1 presenter can do lots of different things. Most weekends I interview all 20 drivers on stage in front of thousands of people. I mean, it can be tens of thousands of people. And to prepare for a race weekend, I keep up to date with all of the news stories across the weeks leading up to the race. I have a ton of note-taking that I do, so many different notebooks. And I get a good night's rest as well before I work.
Studying and note-taking? Being a presenter sounds just like being in high school. What's your favorite part about Formula One?
My favorite part, I have such a huge respect for the drivers, and there is something unmatched about watching the fastest cars in the world around a racetrack. There is just nothing that compares to that feeling, the sound, the smell. I adore it, and it never, ever gets old.
Ooh, can you describe the sound and smell of being on the track for us?
The sound is this really hearty roar of the engines, and you feel it in your body. And the smell is of the rubber of the Pirelli tires, which I adore, and it's magic.
Can you tell us a funny or exciting story from your time working in F1?
I was doing an interview with one of the team principals, Fred Vasseur, who is the team principal of Ferrari, and suddenly a bird started trying to attack us during the interview, and you see us running and hiding behind one another, and obviously it got aired because we were live. It was just so funny. It was brilliant.
Okay, so you have to share crucial statistics, interview drivers, and dodge the occasional bird. Do you ever get nervous when you're preparing to present?
That is a good question. When I get nervous, I just take a moment, deep breath, and remind myself I'm there because I've earned my spot there. So that's a good way of grounding yourself and getting rid of the nerves.
I'll try to remember that the next time I'm feeling nervous. Speaking of teams, you're an ambassador for the organization Girls on Track UK. Can you tell us about your work as an ambassador?
Yes, I am a Girls on Track UK ambassador, which is a community for women and girls who want to get into Formula One or motorsport more widely. And it is a place where we can share advice with each other, and we all support each other, and we have each other's backs. It is such a special role for me to hold, because that's kind of how I first got into motorsport, through that community. So to now be on the other side as an ambassador, it's one of my favorite things.
That sounds like a really great way to get more girls involved in motorsports. Speaking of girls supporting girls, you read us a story of Susie Wolff, racing driver and advocate for girls in racing. What does her story mean to you?
Susie's story is inspiring to see how she made it both on track and the work that she's now doing. She's an absolute powerhouse within our industry. So it's really full circle for me to now reading her story and working alongside her in the paddock. And she's been such a champion for me throughout my career. We want to be like Susie when we're older.
We all do. Okay, I have one last question. What's one piece of advice you want to give to kids who are listening?
One piece of advice would be, when you figure out what you want to do, which you don't need to know right away. I've only got into this job 3.5 years ago. So you don't need to have it all figured out straight away. But when you do figure it out, go after it with everything, because ultimately one of the big things that will be the difference between the people that make it and the people that don't are that the people that make it didn't quit.
Thank you so much for being here, Ariana. It was great talking with you.
Wow, Ariana is so cool. There's so many ways for girls and women to get involved in motorsports, whether driving on the track or reporting from the sidelines. Now, let's trade in our steering wheel for some handlebars and get ready for another type of racing. This next woman is an absolute legend. Ashley Fiolek was born deaf, but that didn't stop her from becoming a motocross champion. She used her other senses to leave her competition in the dust. Soccer player Kaelia Ohai brings us her story.
Once upon a time, there was a girl who loved motorcycles. Her name was Ashley. On weekends, Ashley rode on the gas tank of her father's motorbike, bumping down the winding dirt roads, snaking through the woods of Michigan. She loved the feel of the bike's warmth and power, the rush of the wind whipping past her face, the way the light sparkled through the trees as she and her father sped together down the trail. Every weekend, rain, snow, or shine, Ashley and her parents drove 3 hours from their home in Dearborn Heights to the forest where her grandfather had a little cabin overlooking a dirt motorcycle track. When Ashley was just 3.5, she got a bike of her very own, complete with training wheels. For hours, she rode around and around the little dirt track, tumbling off every few minutes, scrambling back on as soon as she could. By the time Ashley was 5, the dirt track had lost its appeal, and she wanted to get out in the woods where the real fun was. She wasn't sitting on her dad's bike anymore. She was on her own. From the outside, what people saw was a girl riding her bike. What they didn't know was the bike was speaking to Ashley in a language only she could understand. She felt the bike's vibrations in her hands, her legs, her toes. But the roar of the engine, she could not hear it. From the beginning, Ashley was a busy, boisterous child. But as she grew older, her parents realized there was something different about her. The other children she played with were chattering away in full sentences, but Ashley never said a word. Her parents took her to the local hospital for testing, but when the specialist tried to sit Ashley down, she squirmed away. She hated sitting still. The doctors told Ashley's parents that there was something wrong with her brain, and she would never be as intelligent as other children. The Fioleks knew the doctors were wrong, but they still didn't know why she would not speak. And then, one day, Ashley was playing on the floor when her mom, Roni, dropped a big stack of pots and pans. They fell to the floor with a startling bang, but Ashley didn't seem to notice. How strange, her mother thought. Roni scooped 2 pans off the floor, crept up behind her daughter, and clanged the skillets together as loud as she could. And still, the little girl kept playing as if she hadn't heard a thing. At that moment, Roni realized it wasn't that Ashley couldn't understand the world around her. She simply couldn't hear it. At first, there were a lot of tears. But now, at least they knew what was going on when their daughter seemed so withdrawn from the world around her. The puzzle they'd agonized over had finally been solved. More tests at the University of Michigan Hospital confirmed what her parents already suspected. Ashley was completely deaf. This didn't mean she couldn't communicate with the world. She just needed a new way to do it. A doctor showed Ashley a picture of milk and squeezed his hand as if he were milking a cow. That was the word milk in sign language. Ashley had never felt so happy. She had been reading lips since she was a tiny toddler. Now, finally, she could express herself too. Ashley's parents learned sign language so that the family could talk together. They even invented their own signs. When their daughter started getting too excited or antsy, Roni would take her hand and walk her fingers across Ashley's palm until they fell off the side. Ashley knew what that meant. She was over the edge. When Ashley was 8 years old, she and her parents decided to move from Michigan to Florida. The state had everything they could want: sunshine, a school for Ashley, and best of all, great tracks for motorcycle racing. She went from being one of the few deaf kids in school to one of hundreds and joined all sorts of sports teams: soccer, track, volleyball, anything to keep moving. And on weekends, she competed in her favorite sport of all, motocross. In motocross, riders race against each other on rough dirt tracks full of bumps, jumps, and steep hills. Ashley had started competing as soon as the training wheels came off her bike. Let me explain. Being deaf meant that Ashley had to do some things differently than other riders. She couldn't hear a challenger coming up behind her, so she watched the shadows on the track to see if someone was approaching. She couldn't listen for changes in the engine to know when to shift gears, so she felt for subtle vibrations in her bike to sense the gear shifts that would make it go faster. When Ashley got ready for a race, she pulled on thick canvas and leather pants to protect her legs from the heat of the bike's engine, and a long-sleeve jersey to guard her arms from the rocks kicked up by other riders' wheels. She laced up steel-toed boots and tucked her long, blonde hair into a helmet that covered her face, with a brace protecting her neck. Every weekend, the Fioleks joined hundreds of spectators to watch Ashley compete, anxiously awaiting daring jumps, breathtaking speeds, and equally spectacular wipeouts. Motocross racers suffered concussions and broken bones all the time. Even experienced riders could be paralyzed or killed during a fall. Racing was risky, but Ashley wasn't afraid. She raced on days so wet that the track turned slick with mud, or so cold that her fingers went numb in their gloves, or so hot that riders around her collapsed from the heat. All of it was worth it to Ashley. Motocross was in her blood. Ashley loved watching racing events, especially the professional ones. But as she watched her favorite riders, something bothered Ashley. As amateurs, boys and girls competed against each other in races. But when it was time to go pro, motocross became a very different sport for men and women. Professional male racers got more prize money and bigger sponsors. They got paid to pose for advertisements for better bikes and gear. The very best ones, the racers Ashley admired most, were called factory riders. That meant that the big motorbike manufacturers supported their careers and paid them to compete. Women didn't get any of this. Women got less prize money, less practice time, and shorter races. They even had to park their bikes further away than the men did. Some people even said that women shouldn't ride motorcycles at all, that they'd never be able to ride as boldly as the men. Ashley made a promise to herself. She was going to become a professional motocross racer. She would be a national champion. She would be the first woman to compete on a factory bike, and she was going to change the sport for good. Ashley decided to leave traditional school behind and try homeschooling. She was only in 9th grade, but she was on the road so much that she hardly ever made it to class. The other kids at school couldn't understand why anyone would leave high school to race motorcycles. Ashley tried to explain. "This is me. Motocross is what I am," she signed. "I'm doing this because one day I'm going to be a professional motocross racer." Her closest friends were other riders. It didn't matter if they spoke with their mouths and she spoke with her hands. Pro racers like Elizabeth Bash and Sarah Whitmore became her best friends. They even learned some sign language. On the track, they pushed her to race her hardest. Off the track, they made each other laugh. Ashley's favorite joke was to grab her friend's headphones and pop them into her ears, then dance around like she was hearing the music too. At last, the first race of her professional season arrived. In the distance, a marshal waved a green flag, and Ashley and her competitors were off. Ashley fought hard, passing top women riders one after another. Finally, the only person left between her and first place was her best friend, Sarah. It was hard, but the two riders always pushed one another to do their best. Ashley knew what she had to do. When she crossed the finish line, her mechanic held up a sign. "You won!" Ashley's professional career was off to a fantastic start. Now her eyes were on the biggest prize of all, the national championship title. Winning would make Ashley the #1 women's rider in America. She would have to win enough events in the championship series, going up against some of the fastest, toughest riders in the country. But every race and practice session also brought danger. One bad crash could mean an injury that would end her season and maybe even her whole career. Then, in the middle of the season, Ashley got some exciting news. Women's motocross was going to be in the X Games for the first time, and she had been asked to participate. The X Games track was tougher and more challenging than the ones Ashley typically raced on, with ramps, obstacles, and bone-rattling jumps everywhere. She was a little worried. Was it worth risking her safety in the middle of the season? Millions of people around the world watched the X Games on TV. If Ashley raced, she could prove to them that women's motocross was just as thrilling as men's. She shook off her fears and headed out to the practice track. On the practice track, she accelerated into a triple jump, just like the one she'd face at the main event. But Ashley's motorcycle wasn't properly adjusted for a course this intense. Her bike went flying and she crashed violently to the earth. The mud around her turned red with blood. Her neck brace was broken in 2 places. Had she broken her back? Was she paralyzed? Or something even worse? Her parents carried her off the track. Ashley was badly cut and bruised and wouldn't be able to compete in the X Games events the following day. If she didn't rest and heal soon, there would be no season championship either. Just a month later, crowds gathered under a brilliant blue sky in Pennsylvania for the last race in the championship series. And Ashley was at the starting line. She revved her engine as she waited nervously for the starting gate to drop, thinking of all the wins and falls that had brought her to this point. She was ready. The gates dropped. Ashley sped out in front, but Jessica Patterson, the 4-time reigning national champion, and her toughest rival was right behind her. The race was neck and neck. She couldn't hear the motor, but Ashley could feel Jessica gaining speed behind her. She could feel how intensely her competitor wanted to win, and this was the toughest race of her career. Ashley was ahead. Then Jessica led the pack. Ashley took the lead again, but Jessica tailed Ashley until the final lap. It took all of the strength Ashley had to hang on and keep her speed. All those years of training, all the broken bones, all the mud and sweat, it was all pushing her onward now. Ashley sailed across the finish line, and Jessica's bike crashed to the earth behind her. Ashley couldn't hear the crowd, but she could feel that something was different. The hair on her arms stood up. There was a new energy around her, and when she got off the motorcycle and removed her helmet, she was surrounded by people in flashbulbs. The sight almost overwhelmed her. Hundreds of faces, cameras, bright signs, and fists pumping in the air. A man with a microphone stepped up onto the podium, and Ashley read his lips as he announced, "Ashley Fiolek, WMA champion." Her dream had come true. Ashley could hardly wait for the next season to start. But first, Roni had some news for her. Back home in Florida during a family dinner, her mother slid a picture across the table of a beautiful, top-of-the-line Honda motorcycle, one of the nicest bikes Ashley had ever seen. "This is your next motorcycle," her mother signed. Honda wanted Ashley to be one of their factory riders, the first woman ever invited to an American factory team. From now on, she would ride a top-notch motorcycle custom-built just for her. From now on, Honda, and not the Fioleks, would foot the bill for her racing career. And for the first time, a woman would make a real living as a professional racer. Ashley retired in 2012. Though she was only 21, she was already one of the greatest women's motocross riders of all time, with 4 national championships, 2 X Games gold medals, and a spot on Team Honda. She doesn't race anymore, but she's still making her mark on the sport. Today, Ashley coaches young motorcyclists all over the United States with an interpreter at her side, translating her advice from sign language. And she still loves getting out on her bike and riding through the woods, just the way she used to when she was a little girl, back before Ashley Fiolek became a champion.
It doesn't get more exciting than that. Jumping off of ramps, flying through the woods, and helping other girls succeed. Who knows where life will take Ashley next? That's all for this high-speed episode of Rebel Girl Sport. From the world's fastest cars to the most powerful motorbikes, there are lots of opportunities for adventurous rebels who love to go places and fast. Keep pushing, keep dreaming, and keep driving forward. You can find more amazing stories and interviews at youtube.com/rebelgirls. Tune in next time and stay rebel.